And what gangs look like is a part of a club. It's like, it's not kind of like no difference than like, well, it is a difference, but people associate it with like more like a boys and girls club, you know, boys club, you know, Boy Scouts, you know, things like that, but just more on a rougher edge. It's just you're joining something and being a part of something, a clique in an organization, and you got your brothers and you got what you think is your brothers and your friends and all that kind of stuff. Right. That's how that stuff starts out. And all it is a bunch of like lost misfits and insecure kids all coming together under one umbrella, which essentially creates the destruction pattern.
Maybe you'll recognize my next guest from the UFC stage, or maybe as a world champion kickboxer. Maybe you knew him from the street, hanging out with the Bloods, or during a short stint in jail. Maybe you know him as a father of 2 kids who are successful in their own right. Maybe you know him from kid programs that is designed to get kids off the street and on the straight and narrow. Or maybe you know him from just seeing him in some local coffee joint, sitting around with guys like me, trying to figure out ways to impact positive change on this world. Either way, this is one of the coolest cats I know. We've become fast friends, and I'm super excited to have him on the TCast. And I hope you'll join me in welcoming the one and only Durwyn Lamb.
How you doing, man?
Doing good.
Good. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So I'm going to try to go through some of your story and without going through in a traditional way, and just tell me about your upbringing and what did you do when you were 8.
Yeah.
But we may get to some of that. I'm curious to start the fact that you're a fight coach and you were a professional fighter for a bit as well.
Yes.
And so having done a lot of that type of training also, I'm curious if you had any street fighting experience.
Yeah.
In terms of just letting it loose.
Yeah.
And how you feel like that translates into when you get into a specific martial art. I know you do mixed martial arts, but obviously you've got to learn martial arts to mix them in the first place.
That's right.
And some of them translate, some don't. So I'm just curious what got you into fighting? What posed your interest in the first place? And
Man,
how it applies.
By default, honestly, because my mom, you know, she was a karate lady back in the day, you know, when
Really?
In Fort Worth, Texas, in the 70s and 60s, karate was really big. Back then, they call it the blood and guts area karate. You know, back then it was a lot more full contact. You know, no gloves, no hands, no nothing. And my mom was a part of that. And I was able to go to karate class with her, and she actually was a part. Her instructor was one of the founders of the co-founders of the American Black Belt Academy, Pat Burleson, who actually ended up being a judge in Arlington.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was
quite
one
familiar.
Yeah. Pat Burleson, know him well when I was a young man, and used to go to karate class with her. Didn't take much interest in it though. Just like was there watching and seeing it. And then I think just subconsciously it just came a part of what I was doing.
So did you, I know when you were messing around in the streets, you had some experience out there messing around, but you never got super deep because you've always had your own little level of confidence that you knew you weren't going to be a total troublemaker all the time.
Yeah, no. I just, believe it or not, what people don't understand is even if you've trained in karate and different things, it's a different world when you're just out in the real world. Like if you're in a bar, if you're in a club, if you're hanging out in the neighborhood with the buddies and you get into a fight, the last thing you're kind of thinking about is like posting up, doing a karate kick or a kickboxing move or something like that. I think the natural instinct is like the fist and punches start throwing, you know, because those other stuff go out the window because at that point you're in survival mode. When you're fighting in a ring, in a cage, it's more prepared. You're more prepared. You know what's coming. You kind of know what to do. But when things happen outside just in the real world,
somebody's brother has a bottle in their hand behind you.
It changes things. It changes things quick, you know. So you don't have time to be thinking. Now, certain instincts come in, you know, that you have, you know, when you're fighting. Later on, when I was older and I was working security and stuff like that, and I was a little bit more tame and calm, and things broke out in the bar or where I was working, then it was like when you had to get somebody out, and then those other skills would take.
Because then you're
in.
playing by a set of rules.
There
You're
it
not
is.
just trying to put somebody down.
There
You're
it
trying to
is.
safely
get them out of there.
extract them.
So you have time to think better versus being with your boys and your family, and then something jump off, and it's like, oh shoot, and then you just in survival mode that quick.
Yeah. So when you were coming up, tell us a little bit about the type of environment that you grew up in.
Yeah, it wasn't really that bad, man. I don't come from bad stock. I always tell people it's a big thing for people to understand that some of us people that did end up going down the wrong road did not come from bad people. Sometimes we end up hanging out with the wrong crowd because we're around them more than we are the other people. So
parents, yeah.
no, yeah, it wasn't that good. I moved around a lot, some growing up. I spent most of my life here in Fort Worth, but I was one of those kids that was unfortunately was attracted to the wrong thing early. Whereas a lot of kids was into video games and into, sports and stuff. Eventually me even sports, but I was just, for some reason, I was just a knucklehead early. It was attracted to the wrong thing. And then those end up hanging out with the wrong people even early. So then as I was coming up, those are the kind of people that I was attracted to. I don't know why, but maybe because I was bored and just because a sense of wanting to belong. That's what a lot of people won't tell you, is that a lot of that's about a sense of wanting to be a part of something, accepted, and things like that. Yeah, because a lot of boys, our age are insecure. Insecure kids, insecure boys. A lot of them ain't gonna tell you that, but I'm here to tell you that most of them are like that. Most of these guys that become killers and all these kind of things wasn't really like that before. Just young regular kids, and then they grew to become these kind of things. It's kind of like my situation was.
Yeah. So in seeking the combination of events, it's obviously not always parental that cause these things. But were some of these kids that you hung out with? First of all, I also think all of us are exploring it.
Yeah.
Junior high or whatever. We're all trying to fit in and find our thing. So that's not atypical either. But were they older kids for the most part? Because I know somehow at that age, if you're one grade above, you kind of automatically get more respect, right?
Yeah, some was around my age, but had more experience in that world and that place and stuff like that, and just was attracted to it. Good people, good kids, but just had those ways that I always went towards, and that's kind of how that started with me. It was mom and dad couldn't, they can't tell you, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. They're not able to teach you as much and tell you as much about what goes on outside the household in the streets if they haven't really been that way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So a lot of us kids learn a lot of those traits and those things outside the household. That's where all that stuff comes from is your peers and your friends, and even your friends' family. And then outside of that, even your extended family, like your uncles, your cousins, and those kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that you see a lot, and those are people that you're influenced by more so than your parents. You know what I mean? Parents do the basic necessities that they need to do to help you, but they don't mean nothing by it. They just kind of things go over their head a lot, and then the next thing you know, they got a full-blown monster as a kid, as a son. You know what I mean?
So how did your life take a turn? What kind of events led to? Tell me a little bit about that wrong road.
Anger. It was a mixture of anger, fear. So a lot of people don't talk about that, but anger, fear, being curious, being bored, and wanting something to do, and wanting to fit and be a part of something that I thought was cool.
That's great.
For me, I'll be honest with you, when there was a movie called Colors, when Colors came out, I think it was 1988.
That was Oprah and all that.
Right? No,
that was Color Purple. Sorry.
Yeah, Color Purple.
Yes.
The gang movie Colors.
Yeah.
I was always a weird child, man, a little different than everybody else in my family. But when I saw that movie, I was always infatuated with those gangster movies, You know, I always like watching all the old gangster movies and stuff like that, all the action-packed movies. And then when that movie Colors came out, I realized that was a part when the Crip and Blood thing started coming up. And I was kind of infatuated with that before I even knew pretty much what all that stuff was. And then I kind of like started taking to that kind of stuff. And then I started seeing it in real life.
So you think as kids, I mean, we run into this a lot where you think kids can interpret things differently. You know, you talk about, you know, rappers are putting on this facade, or you have a movie that portrays something. And then as an adult, you can take that in and understand that it's just entertainment, or it's just a certain approach. But at a certain age, you're really buying in. Do you think it was kind of something that they heralded as something cool in that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it looked cool, and what gangs look like is a part of a club. It's like, it's not kind of like no difference than like, well, it is a difference, but people associate it with like more like a boys and girls club, you know, boys club, you know, Boy Scouts, you know, things like that, but just more on a rougher edge. It's just you're joining something and being a part of something, a clique in an organization, and you got your brothers, and you got what you think is your brothers and your friends and all that kind of stuff. Right. That's how that stuff starts out. And all it is a bunch of like lost misfits and insecure kids all coming together under one umbrella, which essentially creates the destruction pattern, you know?
Right, because there isn't somebody that's stable in the middle of that running. It's their running.
And even the one that is, exactly. Even the one that is running it is still young and immature themselves. So it's like the blind leading the blind, like Stevie Wonder leading Ray Charles type thing. You know what I'm saying?
Although I think I would dig that.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, I like both of those artists, by the way.
So what happened to you? What was your circumstance? I know when we sat and chatted over coffee, we talked about a lot of things. We didn't really get into that. Yeah. Do you mind?
I mean, honestly, it was my cousin. You know, I looked, same thing. I looked up to my cousin when we were kids, and, you know, coming in back and forth in town, back and forth here in Fort Worth and things, and being with him and hanging out, being over there with him at his, living over there on the east side of Fort Worth and Stop 6 and you know, staying over there with him, and then his mom is my cousin, my mom's cousin too. And just picking up those habits with him as a young age. Even at that time, he wasn't involved with gangs at all. We were just young kids doing things. And we was about a year apart. So I always like, you know, try to follow him, and my cousin Andre try to follow them when we was over there at the house, or we go hang out. We did normal kid stuff, went to the movie and stuff like that. But I just knew, now that I think about it, back then, I just knew that was headed towards a wrong path with him. But because he was my cousin and my relative, I kind of followed.
You didn't recognize that at the time.
No. And so when he decided to join that organization, the gangs, I just basically like, hey, you know, you my cousin, you know, my boy, will follow suit behind what he was doing. And then the other brothers and friends and cousins that was around in the same way, you know. So that's how that started with me.
And in terms of just getting in with the gang,
just following, being a follower. When really I realized I really was a leader, but all of us are followers at that point. He was a follower too, in order for him to become where he was becoming.
I think all of us are followers at some point.
Right.
Leaders kind of manifest over time, right? You
that's
kind
right.
of raise to the top a little bit.
Yeah, that's how that started. And then I got more infatuated with it as I got older, you know what I mean? And then, of course, consequences changes when you started getting more deep into things that you essentially wasn't supposed to be a part of. And that's kind of what happened with me. I wasn't supposed to be that person. I wasn't supposed to be affiliated. I wasn't supposed to be this kind of kid, this kind of person. It's just, it started as a kid. I'm telling you, it started as a little boy being curious about the wrong things, and then it just brewed up into hanging out with the wrong crowd.
Is there anything that you think could have thwarted that at that point?
No, you know, my mom asked me that. My mother asked me that like 2 years ago, I think on my 44th birthday. She said, you know, if I could have told you different, or if we could have told you different, her and my dad, which is a guy, I hate to use the word stepdad because it's, you know, but it's a guy that raised me, my dad. So I call him to have a biological father as well. That's been a big part of my life later on.
Cool.
But they did ask me, had we had the knowledge to tell you these things, do you think you would have done different? Do you think you would have changed? And it was like, man, it was a hard question, because it was like, man, I don't know. Maybe I was already, when you're a kid, I learned that kids make up who they are early.
They know everything by 15, right?
Yeah.
Just ask them.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. They make up who they are already. So no matter what, just like me and you talked about, it's like, you're not who you are in front of your parents as you are at home.
Yep.
And, so when she asked me that, I was like, man, I don't know, Mom. That's a good question. And honestly, probably not. At that stage, probably not, but I wouldn't have known, I wouldn't have known, because I wasn't told about a lot of things, but I wasn't told about a lot. My mom has the old school, so she comes from a background where, they didn't have a lot growing up and didn't have a lot of money, a lot of things. So she understands like hard living, she understands hard times, but and she understands being in the streets, hanging out in the streets, but being in the streets, hanging out in the streets, and being a street person,
right,
is two different things. So she understood some contact in life, and my dad did too, but they didn't understand, because the old school. So by the time that gang and being in the streets and being a hoodlum, as my mama called them, hoodlum, being in all those things, it was already like kind of like passed over their head. They was more worried about why my behavior was always messed up, why I was always getting in trouble in school, why I was always getting kicked out, they was just wondering like, what's going on, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, you still think that's attributed to just kind of following your cousin? And
and I think it's also attributed to, being honest, like, not having that kind of guidance and those kind of long talks that I would have with my son or some of the young men that I mentor now. I didn't get those talks, not blaming them, right? They didn't understand. I mean, they
didn't have the context to have those talks.
That's super fascinating, because the way that you've explained it now is you were like the first generation of kids that were growing up in the glorification of gang culture.
Absolutely.
And your parents didn't understand that.
No.
So like I'm 27.
Right.
So that's all I've known is like that's how people ended up like that.
That's
it was
right.
the glorification of gang culture. But it's so fascinating that your parents had no concept of that.
None.
And you were the first one.
I was the first generations of that culture. So, and it was crazy because my mom did tell me later that she started noticing like colors that I was wearing, stuff like that was changing. She noticed that like later, I was dealing with other things because, my mom's awesome, but you grow up, my mom also was a very hard woman to be around and deal with when so as kids, you don't realize that you also deal with other kind of traumas and triggers and stuff. I didn't even know what those things was till just recent, like a few years recently, because you're thinking in the culture that you grew up in our culture, you're thinking that the stuff that you see, the stuff that you hear, even in your household or around your household, family, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, you think that stuff is normal. So the yelling, the arguing, the talking crazy, the violence from different people you see, you're thinking that's just kind of like part of like everybody is. We yell, we argue, we fight, and then we act like everybody act like nothing's going on. I think what happens is that what I've learned is that a lot of times parents don't realize the effect that you have and that you have on the children as they're growing up, and I realized that because it took me later on to realize that, damn, I was, why was I so angry? Because I was talked to a certain way. I was treated in a certain way. So it made me subconsciously angry. And then later on, it ended up transferring down the line to other things, Being alone, a lot of people don't realize, even parents. I tell parents all the time, just because you're in a household don't mean that your kid is not alone, So being present doesn't just mean physically, and it means emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and it's like a full-time job. And a lot of times we miss that route.
Yeah.
Only because the parents before them didn't teach them as well.
Or
and
even
only
less so. You're right. Generationally, it goes back.
Only has so much.
A little bit less of an
That's
amount
right.
of affection that was
That's
given.
right. And that helped me go, because I was angry for a while once I got to understand. And you go back and look at your childhood, you're like, damn, some of that stuff was messed up. You know, some of the stuff that was said, that was done. But then you're like, then you kind of give them grace, because you're like, I seen a pattern before, my mom, and then that, she did the best that she could, for what she had or what she thought.
Yeah. And it's fascinating too. Anybody could look at their parents and think, you go back in especially if they all were having kids earlier and earlier and earlier back in those generations too. So you're in your early 20s, you're 27. So you have already a 5 or 6 year old kid, 7-year-old kid, whatever. And the maturity that you're at 20, raising a kid is a completely different game. And then when you become 20, 21, 22, you look back on your parents who you had this impression of because they were kind of your everything. They modeled everything. And then you realize how human they are.
Yeah.
Really. So I think that's just a realization that most people come to, because the mistakes and the efforts that they made, good or bad, all kind of come into a different context.
That's right. My mom had me young. She was only 21, 22.
Yeah.
Yeah. When she had me. So,
Yeah. Mine too. So, I mean, you can look back and you think, well, shoot, I don't know if I'd have done better when I was 21 or 22 either.
Right.
So it's interesting. So when you ultimately, did you end up getting in enough trouble where you get locked up at some point?
Yeah, just not long, but I did a little bit. I was 18 going on 19, and I got out about short of my 21st birthday. So, and it was, it wasn't nothing major. I caught a charge of an harassment, assault, didn't do, and there's another thing that I got to tell people forget this stuff, because this stuff, when you're first getting in trouble, you don't know about these things. You get in trouble, you get on probation, you think it's a joke, you don't do your classes, you don't pay, you get your probation revoked. You're
just glad you're free at the moment.
Yeah. Caught another charge while you're on probation, stuff like that. So now you're dealing with, your probation being revoked, and then the new charge that's upon you. Once I got out of jail, I really did not like that place at all. I know a lot of people brag about it and being all this time. No, I hadn't done 10, 15 years, none of that kind of stuff. Didn't want to. Didn't like it. I like my freedom, but my young, egotistical mind wouldn't allow me to stop being in trouble. So I went, I was still young, so 20, 21 years old, went back hanging out with my cousin, and just things kind of like got worse from there. You know what I mean? It just kind of like tumbleweed, because at that point, I felt like my ego allowed me to believe that I had something to prove, and I want to show them that I can get down, who I was, what I was, so you start doing anything you can to like show who you are, which essentially is a form of a deep insecurity, A lot of people won't tell you that, that you'll mask that in the art of like being, I'm tough, I'm this, I'm that, I'm who I am, that, and really you're just a scared kid, and you're just trying to, and then you'll put yourself in situations, or you'll be in situations where things jump off, and you have to show and prove who you say
you go above and beyond at that point.
And then at that
point,
put
yourself in that situation.
And either at that point, either you fight or flight. So once you fight, then it's easier the next time. Then it's easier the next time. Then it's easier the next time. Before you know it, you're a full blown different character.
Yeah,
you're a different character than who you were naturally supposed to, created to be.
Yeah.
You're different now. You're way different. And that creates, to a lot of people, a kid's identity crisis, problems and stuff, because you lose completely who you are and who you're supposed to be. And for a while, I went down a deep, dark path, and I'm a believer of God. I'm one of those guys, always had God in his heart since a kid, always was worried about doing wrong. But once you get to that place and you're there, it's no turning back at that.
I feel like you're
point.
alone.
Oh yeah,
So one interesting thing that you mentioned is something that I've always kind of touched on. We've got all kinds of ways, different conversations we've had on this, but I'm curious if jail wasn't a deterrent at all. As much as you did not want to be there, you didn't get out and say, man, I'm turning this around. Is there something about the experience in jail that you feel like could have been improved? Much like the question about your parents, but even more so about jail, because we know about the reciprocity problem. We know about how difficult it is as a young Black man in a poor neighborhood to not be put in jail. Mm-hmm. And if it's not a deterrent, I know there are educational programs, but it doesn't mean everybody gets them.
No.
What are some of the things, I know even in a short time, sometimes as a young man, that's the perfect equation for, man, I'm turning around.
Right.
But when that disparity number comes around and then you get right back out and go back in, what can be done in the jail or prison systems that you think might have helped you turn it around? Or is it just something outside of that experience?
Maybe more like structural, like life programs. This is what I do now when I'm going to talk to the kids. Me and my buddy Angel created this thing called LNA Life Empowerment Workshops, where we basically have a whole curriculum on how to teach kids to be prepared for life. Mm-hmm. So, in jail, talking to kids and teaching them life skills, bank account, how to balance a bank account, job, teaching them like, hey, if you have this felony, you have this deal, you're not going to be able to get a job, teaching them proper life skills to make it in that world. And I think if they had more of those programs in jail, not saying that everybody will be saved, but I think you'll have a better percentage. I mean, bringing a chaplain in here and there and preach, reading the Bible or stuff like that, I understand that because I'm a Christian, but actually sitting in and having a classroom and classes for these guys and to teach them etiquette things and stuff like that to prepare themselves for life, I think could make a difference. Some are gonna get it, some are gonna learn, some aren't. Some aren't gonna get it. But I think if we have more of those programs, the crazy thing about jail is that you want to get out of jail until you get out. You hate it there until you get out.
So a lot of that is from my experience, having not been in jail. Well, I've spent the night one night.
Yeah.
That doesn't count, does it? Oh, man, I knew I should have had insurance that time too. It's really bad, actually. But
ultimately, is what you're saying, that if you had someone like yourself coming in and saying, like, look, I've been where you are in life. Trust me, you do not want to end up back here. And if you don't do X, Y, and Z, you're going to end up sitting right back here listening to another guy tell you the same thing again.
And I've helped so many people, so many young people in that regard, doing martial arts and like doing the stuff in the schools and a little bit of public speaking. I get a lot of young men now that message me now and say, hey, thank you. And that was the stuff that you said years ago. It stuck with me. I get these messages almost daily. Yeah. That's how I know that I'm doing the job that I need to do, because a lot of these guys were on the wrong path, but I just stuck with them. And they believed in me. They believed in my spirit. And I knew I wasn't just a person coming in trying to get something from them. So I got that trust from them. And I was able to help a lot of these guys. And I did it through coaching and martial arts and stuff. And while they thought they was learning how to fight or learning how to kick somebody's butt, I was spiritually and mentally preparing them for life things.
I think that's intuitive too. When you approach somebody, you look somebody in the eye, you kind of get that vibe about somebody a lot of times.
Right.
How do you feel about guys that are troubled and you're leveraging martial arts and combatives and stuff like that, which some people might consider something that they could take back out in the streets and it could be a detriment? And I know you're teaching them different disciplinary things. How are some ways that it actually helps improve someone? Because, I mean, you know how to fight at a certain age too, and you didn't use it for nefarious reasons, right? Because you learned it after you'd already been in trouble and done all this stuff. You started really getting serious, right?
Yeah.
So what is your view basically on taking troubled kids, teens, whatever, young 20s, and teaching them how to do something so destructive?
Yeah. Because what happens is we break down the mental and the spiritual side of it first, which is like the discipline. And what I'm instilling them is to be structured. If you can come in and jump rope every day, shadow box, do these movement, sit in class, pay attention, listen. Hey, stop. I'm talking. Pay attention. That starts creating that development. When they start learning how to fight and how to defend themselves, you're going to find out that 90-some% of these kids or these people that learn martial arts, they start to embody the martial arts spirit, because now they know that I actually can fight and can take care of myself with an actual proper skill set, so I don't have to go and hurt somebody on purpose, because it teaches, for the most part, a confidence.
Yeah.
And it teaches a real confidence, not a false one. Yeah. Okay. Structure, real confidence and structure. And a lot of these guys get used to being in a pattern of coming to the gym. So then that's what happens. All the stuff that they're learning in martial arts is creating a structural brain pattern in their mind.
Learning how to execute habits.
Execute habits.
Yeah.
Good habits. And then when they go into the real world, they'll start using these things they learn in the martial arts, and they'll apply it to their life.
Is part
of the real world.
Is part of it too, when you're teaching kids that come in to take your classes, that you're providing a male role model in their lives that most of them just don't have?
Absolutely. Most of the guys and young ladies that come in the gym are troubled. Even if they come from a suburban background, still troubled. White, black, Hispanic, a lot of them are all troubled kids. Most of the guys that become fighters have something else going on. Most of them, most percentage of them. You don't see very many regular, just everyday people coming to do this stuff. And boxing, because I was a boxing coach, and then also kickboxing and mixed martial arts coach. Most of those guys and young ladies that come in, I have that thing. So no, I tell people all the time, some coaches be like, well, I ain't their daddy, I ain't this, I'm just a coach. I said, no. Regardless if you don't want that role is now yours. So when they come in there, they're in your hands and your arms. So whatever you say, or whatever you don't say, or whatever you do or don't do, is going to affect them, because they start looking up to you more than they look up to their parents, more than they look up to their uncles and stuff like that. You become that person, that go-to guy. They say a coach or a trainer is a counselor, a parent, a preacher, a therapist. He's all that in one. And you have to be able to embrace it. A lot of guys don't embrace it. I know a lot of coaches, and they don't embrace that. They don't embrace it. They just do their job. Their job is to make monsters and create fighters so they can be champions. I'm opposite. I'd rather create spiritual world champions. If you become a world champion in the process of me teaching you, coaching you, then that's just the icing on the cake. But I really do have a job, and it's in my heart and my mind to do that job, because I know, I see it in their eyes. I see it in these kids' eyes when I see them, like, there's a lot of troubled things they need help with. So I want to help them pass through that.
And I think that being said, doing what you do is not for everybody, because you can be a very talented fighter, but doesn't make you a talented coach. Right. And you could even be a talented coach when you're teaching technique, but if that's where it stops, that's where it stops.
That's right.
And I think I mentioned this to you also is, you are somewhat of a chameleon, because you've got guys in the hood that still look up to you, guys that are still doing bad things that look up to you, guys like me that look up to you. And, we commune and talk about cool things. And there are not that many people that can sit in the middle of a room full of that kind of diversity and still be the guy. What do you think makes that you such a magnetic personality for people like that?
I've seen all different types of people. I've been around all different types of people lately in my life, growing up more so in my adult years, and then doing that. And I just think it's the spirit. I attribute that to the spirit of God and Jesus Christ. Just being honest with you, because it's one spirit, and that spirit is universal. And when you try to walk in that light, and try to be as pure as you can. I'm not perfect and I make mistakes like everybody else, but when your intentions and your desires is to be pure with people, it doesn't matter what they see on the exterior. It's what they see on the inside. And I think that's what a lot of people have. I can talk to anybody, and I've talked to some of the most wealthiest people in the world, to the guys on the street. That's just who it is. And so it's what they see inside of your spirit that makes you a chameleon like that.
And so how did you manage to, so you've brought that forward. You also obviously have success in business. You run your own gym. You have more than one fighter, I assume, that fights pro?
I have a few amateur fighters and a few pro fighters that I train.
Yeah, so how did you establish that? And tell us a little bit about your levels of success there.
Yeah, I just, I was a coach, started coaching, 20 years ago. And then, and that's an interesting thing there because I didn't know I was going to be a coach. So it's just kind of weird how your path goes. All you have to do is keep stepping and walking. I tell people you'll find your purpose by just keep moving in life. It's a lot of us don't know what we're trying to do at 25, 24, 25, 26 years old. Started coaching my stepson at the time. And then I led into coaching a full boxing team and then led up to a whole MMA team and then to opening up a gym at that point and then training guys that went to the organization, UFC, and had some guys fight Showtime Boxing and HBO and ESPN, all those things. And in the process of that happening, I was fighting as well. So I was fighting and coaching.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I had a couple of ideas and dreams that I wanted to accomplish myself that I didn't get a chance to do. Didn't know they were going to be dreams, but it was something at the time. I was like, man, I want to do this. So I kept coaching and things like that, and just end up taking off like wildfire from there. I didn't even know that it was going to become big. End up opening up a gym. We started out named Phalanx MMA. Man, had a nice gym. Then we moved over there down to university. Been there for 10 years, and now we have another spot. And so now I'm just coaching. A lot of people ask the question, are you passionate about coaching? I'm like, I don't know so much if I'm passionate about coaching fighters. I think I'm just more passionate about the people and helping people. You know what I mean? Being a martial artist is cool. It's something that I acquired over the years for having a skill set and training and stuff. But, I'm not so big. I'm big on more like helping the young people and seeing what they do in their lives. And so, but it actually ended up working out because I ended up being able to put a couple of, like 3 people in the UFC and
that's amazing.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like that wasn't my plan at first to coach at all. It just like, I didn't even know I was going to train MMA fighters. I've started out coaching boxing, but I had a background in karate and taekwondo, and then some boxing. And so then that's kind of how all that, and jiu-jitsu, and that's how all that
and that's
came out.
Super old school too, because that's also, in the 80s, again, the karate stuff and kickboxing. I did kick, you can tell my nose is still silent. I didn't know how to set my nose properly. You got to lose some, right? Have you lost any fights?
Yeah, I have. I lost a couple of fights, pro MMA fights, and put myself out there online. Also won an amateur world title in kickboxing. So in 2008, I won a kickboxing title. So
in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's one of those things too. You can only compete so long in the ring. So it's fantastic that you're able to segue into teaching people the skills and then leverage the life skills that you're bringing forward too. That's awesome. Yeah,
coaching is a thankless job. I'm gonna tell you that. It's not, and it's not for the faint of heart. I think I had more trouble in being a coach, besides relationships and stuff, but I had more problem being a coach than I did in anything else in my life. Being a gym owner and being a trainer was more problems that I had than anything in the streets.
Yeah.
It was rough, man. It's been rough, man, 20 years, because, they don't, people, they're selfish. A lot of fighters, a lot of people that you work, they're selfish by nature. They're selfish. And so you're putting more in than you're getting back, So the only way I can say is that what I get out of it is seeing people accomplish their goals and seeing people become better men and better women. That's what I get out of it.
Yeah, because I mean, when they're coming to you,
yeah,
if they were already molded, then you're not accomplishing much anyway.
That's right.
If you get a bunch of knuckleheads, then you got to put up with knuckleheads until you can mold them into men again.
Even if I stopped coaching today, I would still be in the path of helping young people, whether it's counseling and things like that. So that would still be my job. That would still be my purpose. That would still be my destination. It's just that I didn't know what I was signing up for when I first started coaching, man. And sometimes I wish I didn't sign up for it, but I'm glad that I did, because the ones that did appreciate it, the ones that do doing well, and a lot of guys, I realized that wasn't going to be great. I know which ones are going to go far in fighting, and I know which ones aren't. I have that eye. I can see it. That's not the point. The point is being able to keep them around long enough to where I can instill something into them. There's a lot of guys that fought for me that only had a few fights and now are doing great things in their life. Businessman, husbands now, got kids, some wives, so that to me is the success story, and then them texting me saying, hey, Coach Durwyn, man, a lot of stuff that you taught me, or hey, man, it's because of you that I got closer to God, or it's because of you, because the things you taught me, that's where I feel like the winning side of it.
That's a great testimony, because again, you can teach them how to be great fighters too, but that only has a longevity is only so long.
Right.
You're going to be in your 30s and washed up before you know it. And if you're not carrying forward those life skills, what's the point? So what you're doing for them is a heck of a lot bigger than teaching them to fight.
And they see things in you. There's things they're going to see in you that aren't always right. So it's hard when like I said, when you're on the platform being a leader, man, all eyes on you. So, you do, if a regular person do something wrong, but you, coach, a leader, a trainer, so it's like always having to be like walking around on eggshells. And what people don't understand is what coaches go through themselves. I'm actually going to write a book about that, the behind the scenes of what happens, that are us guys that are normal people too. They forget that we're normal and we have emotions, we have feelings, we have family, we have kids, we have all these problems, and nobody really says, hey, how you doing? Or, hey, coach, how you doing? Or, hey, dad, are you okay? Or, hey, uncle, whatever. It's always
reciprocate
like
the things that you're doing.
Never really, man. No one really checks on you. The ones that do are the other ones. Thank God, like I have my dad. I talk to him a lot, but for the most part, people aren't calling saying, hey, coach, how you been? You need anything? Are you okay? No, it's always the other way around, so, and people don't realize that a lot of times coaches go through their own spiritual battles, emotional battles, financial battles, and things and they could be going through something right then and there while they're steady trying to help you.
Yeah.
Steady helping you, and you steady taking from him, but he's going through the things right now, and they don't know that coach is at home crying sometimes, and he's at home crying sometimes, trying to wonder how he's going to pay his bills, how he's going to do this, how he's going to do that. They don't see none of that.
And you got to show up and be stoic.
Yeah.
Because they're following your lead.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, that's too bad, but at the same time, I know that you've got enough success stories coming where you're gonna have a life full of those guys coming back around to you. So tell me a little bit about what are your goals from here, other than writing a book, which that's unenviable too.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things, start a business, you love fighting, you start a gym, and all of a sudden you're like, now I have no time to fight because I'm running a business.
Yeah.
The book is the same thing as that's a time consumption deal.
I was going to ask you about it.
Well, I'm happy. We'll sit down and wrap it. I would love to read it though.
Yeah.
I'm not discouraging you. I think it'd be fantastic. What other things you have in the pipeline or that you would like to do up the road?
I like to build. I like one of my race goals is one of them is I like to build kind of like Hope Farm. I want something like that. I've always wanted something like that for a while, like a place where kids can come to and do an after school program. I wanted to do that at my old school, but we never got it off the ground. I want to do that, and I want to do want to get my podcast back going open, and I want to do I really want to travel and do public speaking, man. I really like people. I like talking. I like learning from people. I like sharing my testimony, sharing my story. I've done some things a lot, but I like to make that kind of like a global thing. Yeah. I like to be able to travel and also do martial arts seminars, more of those and things like that. So yeah, those are my long-term goals,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
steady.
You'll be great at that.
Yeah.
I can already tell you'll be great at that.
I hope so. Thank you.
So, before I get to my little capper question, what is one of the most important lessons that you've drawn from your youth? So I didn't quite get that transition period, as you got out of jail and you were still kind of acting a fool, but then you started fighting in the ring and things just came together and you took your own path. Mm-hmm. What is something that you can take forward that maybe somebody could relate to as the greatest lesson from your youth?
The greatest lesson from my youth is that I would say it's okay, and I know it's going to be hard for people to understand, especially when you're young. It's okay to be yourself. I know that sounds cliche, right? But it's really okay to not have to be something else because you're trying to make it in life. Is to really be yourself and find out truly who you are in your path and be yourself, and just say that you don't have to be like those kids. You don't have to go around these kids or be these kids to be cool, to be secure, to be helped. Just really be yourself, and that'll create a strong man. Yeah. Being yourself will create a strong man. I would say that I'm strong now just because I worked hard to be and desired to be that. But I would say from the youth, man, which is a lot of kids, I seen it growing up, being in schools, kids getting bullied, being traumatized from home and things like that. And just, so it kind of creates insecurities and lack of self-confidence, and which that's hard to get by when you're that young. But I would say, the biggest lesson I learned was if I could have just because I had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I just decided I wanted to do this because I thought it was cool. And I just think being yourself and finding out who you are early.
And as a kid, you're kind of alone in doing that.
You really are.
You do something nerdy. You're a nerd. It's actually okay to be a nerd. Look at me. Yeah. It's okay. Right?
Hey, you don't realize until you're older that you don't have to care what other people think.
No.
And if kids knew that younger, you're right, they could be themselves. They don't have to feel like they have to follow the crowd or do everything to fit in. Because when you graduate high school, you're never going to see those people again.
I tell my son this.
It doesn't matter.
That same thing you just said is what I told my son. Because my son, he, we would have talks and I would tell him, hey, it's okay to be this. Because I was a kid that was wanting to do this and wanting to do this and end up almost costing me my freedom for my life and in my life. And so when he was coming up, I would always try to instill things in his brain and his head like, hey, man, you're perfect how you are. I'm watching you. I'm seeing what kind of young man you are. And just like you said, I would tell my son, the kids, because my son's a golfer, got his PGA card and all that good stuff. He's a teacher and everything. I would tell him, because at first, as you're young, you think, oh, man, golf ain't that cool. I'm like, hey, just those kids that are playing and making fun, not being funny, but let's just see where they're at later on.
Right.
When you graduate from high school, you're not even going to talk to these kids as he don't talk to most of the kids. And we're going to see where you at. Graduate college, cum laude, got his own place, own car that he paid for, working at the golf course, teaching lessons, doing his thing. Never been in trouble in a day in his life. No felonies, never been in jail, never, no nothing. Hell, I don't even know if he even had a ticket ever, but that was me saying, I saw a lot of myself in my son and being in that way, wanting to fit in and being that. And then I was like, man, thank God that I was able to get him early enough to where I could talk with him and have a good speak with him. And I attribute a lot of that to his mother too. His mom being who she was and where she was as a woman, standing strong with him as well. So, I give her a lot of the credit for a lot of that stuff too.
Well, it's difficult as you're young. I mean, you think high school is it. Especially you're a sophomore, you're aspiring to do something by your senior year, whatever. All your goals have to do with that. And then you get old like me, and you go back to these reunions. Yeah. And a lot of these fools will just go to these reunions because it's the glory days. Right. Like coming back to visit the glory days, glory days. Right. High school's horrible. Yeah. I'm just curious to see how these people turned out, But some of these other folks are coming back to get back into the celebratory state.
Isn't that crazy?
I used to be so popular and whatever. It just makes no sense.
That's the same thing I see in the gang culture. And me and my buddy Trent Rose, which Trent Rose is the guy who started the Bloods out here. You know, me and him, one of my best friends. We talked about the other day that a lot of the guys that we see that we was around, coming up with around, that they still have to talk about is the glory days of being from where they're from, Truman Street, or where they're from, and the gangs and stuff like that. And that's all they get to talk about. You'll see it a lot in interviews and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't want to say it's sad being disrespectful, but it is in a sense, because I see a lot of goodness and greatness in these guys, but they never was able to kind of like manifest anything past
step out of that
character and that mindset. So that's the only things I have to talk about. So it's the same thing with that, you know.
Yeah, that's a shame too. And that's, I think it's never too late. I mean, obviously you get older, you've kind of set in your ways in a lot of ways. But man, there's so much opportunity these days to just take a left turn and go do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did it. You know, when my son was born, like a light switch went off. I was like, dang, you know, I'm looking at him, you know, as his little face. I'm like, I can't be doing this. But I still didn't really learn my lesson. Because I was still
considered
young.
It.
Yeah. I was like, but it took a while. It took a while. It took a long time. And what people don't understand is that this is the thing I tell about people getting in trouble. It takes like a short time to get in trouble, but it takes a long time to get out. And I tell people that all the time. It takes a long time to get out, man. I mean, and this stuff, you cannot be in trouble for years, but this stuff can still haunt you well into your late 40s and 40s and stuff for the mistakes and choices that you make as a young man. Oh. You're not knowing that when you're doing it because you're being a part of what you're being a part of. Yeah. You know, so that's another thing. That's the stuff that's not taught to you. So when you get to that certain age, you're like, damn, man, now I can't get this. I can't get this. You know, your credit shot. See, no one's tell us the stuff about having good credit or these kind of things. None of that was told to me. So,
or even taking pleas on little deals. You know, I talked to Jay Jordan for a while, who politics for those types of things to lift a lot of those penalties after you've been out and been successful. Like, let us do things. Let us work around kids. I mean, that would have ruined your opportunity to work in schools.
Right.
You know, seriously. I mean, that would be a tragedy.
Right.
You know, because of how fantastic you are with kids. That would be a tragedy if you screwed up something when you were 20 that got you a felony that turned into something where now it's prohibitive forever.
Right.
I mean, that's the saddest song ever because you're helping so many people. So
right. Yeah, that's the truth. Honest to God, true.
All right. So lastly, since you have so many other things in common, I feel like we have so much in common. And not just that we look alike, but that we have other stuff.
I was thinking that too. I was like, man, we got to be related somewhere down the line.
I always have to change the lights in the room. Johnny's always complaining because I'm like, could you have some yellow light? Because it's like going to glare. It's like putting the sun in your eyes or something. But what kind of music are you into? And how much did music influence your behavior on the good or bad side or whatever?
I mean, I've always been pretty strong in that sense. But I know, like, when I was going through certain things and I was moving a certain way and I was going to a certain place, I knew what kind of, like, song to put on. You know what I mean? Or what kind of song to put on. As I got older, I knew I got to a point where it didn't bother me. I can just listen to any music all day and nothing bother me. Mature.
Yeah.
I like hip hop, man. I like R&B. A lot of R&B. I'm
well, those are both super broad. Like hip hop has been in existence for a long time. It's and R&B for sure too. So what kind of eras are you talking about?
Oh man, 80s R&B. Okay. My favorite era. You know, 80s, 90s rap. My favorite era. You know? Yeah. So like now that, you know, because I got my son and I got a lot of guys, I like listening to some of the new guys too. I like the new beats because I like music. I like instruments. Like I play drums too. People didn't know that I played drums in school, middle school. But
told you we're twin brothers.
See, and I like some of the new stuff. Some of it's a little bit much for me. Some of the stuff that they're saying or talking about. So I try not to get too close to that. But yeah, man, I like the 80s R&B, 90s R&B era big time, you know. And I like 70s stuff because I grew up on it. My mom, you know, cleaning in the house, listening to Marvin Gaye, Isley Brothers, you know what I'm saying? So Gladys Knight, all these people, Teddy Pendergrass. I grew up with a lot of these kind of old school, so I like a lot of old school music.
And then all the way into Luther and everybody.
I love Luther Vandross, one of my favorite artists of all time. I love Prince. I love all those guys.
Man, Prince was so underappreciated until he passed away. Oh,
yeah, that's crazy. He's one of the best artists ever lived.
We used to cover stuff from his first record that most people can't even find. We cover all this stuff, and it's all him playing all the instruments. And all. Yeah. Dude's sick. So.
Yeah, I like it, man. Some of this new stuff is interesting, It's rough. You get to listening to what they're really saying and stuff. It's tough. A little bit tough for me to, like, swallow so much, but I do like some of the new stuff, but not a whole bunch of it.
Do you sometimes feel old when you say that? Like, this is the same stuff that your parents used to preach? Because I don't even think it's cultural. I just think it's kids. When I was coming up in the 80s and listening to satanic metal, when the adults are like, they don't worship Satan. Right. Everybody knows it's a thing. Right. But it was a thing that freaked parents out at the time. Yeah. So, and kids take it differently.
Mm-hmm. Because man, it's not that I forget my age, but I guess because I'm 46, but I just don't look as old as a lot of guys around my age. So sometimes I forget, and I'm still active and stuff. So sometimes I forget, and I'm around some of the young people because I train them and coach them. So I hear a lot of the music and stuff like that. But some of it's catchy. But yeah, I do feel a little older now. I'm not gonna lie. I was trying to nod at, like, well, you look younger, so you're good. But no, the reality is, looks is one thing, and then the reality of the age is different.
We sound like our parents sometimes. I always feel like, man, I'm the old white stiff coming saying such and such, and it just sounds like an old man.
No,
but I'm not trying to.
Yeah.
But all of this stuff comes with maturity. That perspective comes back. Yeah. Like I said, it would. If we had that perspective when we were 20, how successful would be? It's just, I can't even measure that, man. Really, if you had that kind of maturity. So.
And you, what kind of music?
Music? Yeah. Oh shoot, man, it's all over the place. I love some good funk. You talk about Isley Brothers and stuff like that, and Earth, Wind and Fire, stuff that. I came up on a lot of that stuff. Even Frankie Beverly and Maze and all that kind of stuff. So I came through all that stuff. I coming up playing in bands, I was the white kid playing with these older cats that took me to all these urban clubs and stuff and played when I wasn't even old enough to. So, the keyboard player actually teaching me what groove is. You play a beat. I'm talking about groove. This is how it sits in there, all that stuff. So I still adore stuff that grooves, and I got into a lot of rock. And then after I got through the 80s and got into college age, I came up here. Is what moved me up here. I've studied music in North Texas, and I got.
Do you listen to hip hop at all?
I do listen to hip hop plenty. Yeah, and my son got me into more of the modern stuff, which isn't as modern now. It's not gangster rap stuff necessarily, but Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorites. I think he has a lot to say. Yeah, and it's so creative. Musically, it's so creative and experimental and stuff. So I can.
Who doesn't like Kendrick, man? I like Kendrick.
Yeah, so I love anybody that's goes somewhere else, right? And it's hard to find these days. There's a lot of new music.
Rap with a message.
Yeah. I know. Look, I know that sounds old too. Conscious hip hop, but even the stuff I write is, whether it be some of the rapper stuff where we got a guest rapper or it's my own stuff, it's still kind of conscious too. It's all has a message that whether it's telling a story, a tragic story or something, a conversation starter. Right. And I love thought-provoking music. Yeah. And again, I can even take some of the crazy stuff if I know it's supposed to be thought-provoking as opposed to inciting some kind of, getting you all jacked up for no reason. But and I used to like, even when I was in my Fishbowl days, I used to like cranking up Dirty Worms, a group out of Austin.
That's a alternative.
Sort of
rap
group. Smacky Stallone down there. And they used to talk about full clips and shooting and stuff, but they were talking about lyrics all the time. So I loved how they paralleled all that stuff where you're basically slinging the same kind of spit, but without being literal about killing people. Right. You're killing them on the stage because you're rap battling or whatever. And so that kind of idea was kind of cool too. And they just put they had a lot of really talented musicians in there.
I forgot about Dirty Worms. Man. They were really popular.
Yeah.
They were real popular.
They're regionally for sure. Yeah. And I know he did some stuff with I'm gonna forget.
I think my ex-brother-in-law actually opened up for them.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He was in a band called Mad Mexicans, and he played a guitar. Yeah, I think they opened up for him up in Austin.
Yeah. So it's just a rap rock excursion, man. It was awesome. Yeah. Awesome stuff. So, well, man, it's an honor to chat with you online. I'm sure we're going to chat more offline. I'm sure I'll kick myself for not asking you a bunch of more things. But as we spend more time, man, I'm always here for you if you do need anything.
Yeah, likewise.
And so, it's an honor to have you here. And thanks for sharing your story. I'm sure you're going to affect a lot of people with your message, man.
I appreciate you allowing me to come, man. That's been an honor. I've been wanting to meet you for a while. So I'm glad that I was able to do this. So
got that out the way, and we got this out the way.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, my friend.
All right, thank you.
What's it take? What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Successor of the sandbox with second grade rules. A confident fake to make you do what they want when they won't. Pay the fool. A diplomatic face is the one to see you through. And don't let those bigots take you off your game, but just to let them loose. Just sit here in the front